The real estate transfer tax was an initiative that was identified as an opportunity by Kay Kelly Arnold. She was an incredible strategist, a very good lobbyist. And in the spring of 1987, I spent quite a bit of time at the Arkansas State Legislature.
The whole motivation behind it primarily was to fund the Nature Conservancy in Arkansas. And Representative Jody Mahoney, also from El Dorado, was a big champion of the Nature Conservancy, as was I, having worked for the Nature Conservancy in Washington, D.C. And so Jody did me the favor of bringing me a draft of the bill that was going to be introduced. And I read through the bill, all focused on natural area conservation and preservation. And what I did, I took my little pen, and everywhere it said the word natural, I added 2 words, and cultural, all the way through the bill. And thus it wound up being money that is shared by both the natural and cultural preservation.
At least during my tenure with the board, I think its work with its partners to enhance the state historic tax credit was probably one of the more important things. That work to enhance the tax credit is going to ensure that more people are able to get access to those funds. It makes historic preservation more accessible, and I think that's really important for the future of preservation in the state.
And thankfully, because of the state tax credits and the federal tax credits that are available, we're able to save these houses.
Aubrey Anthony, who was Preserve Arkansas's president when I was the executive director, was one of the creators of Main Street during his time at the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And he made sure when he got back to Arkansas that Arkansas was in the pilot program in the whole nation of the Main Street program.
The Main Street Arkansas program was a very interesting partnership. The Historic Preservation Alliance generated the local support. Then it became a partnership between the Alliance and 2 state agencies. Initially, the Main Street Arkansas program was in what is now, I believe, the Department of Arkansas Commerce. It was resident at the Arkansas Industrial Development Commission. That was where the organizational head was of the Main Street program. The design element of the Main Street program was an architect, or grew to be more than an architect, at the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program, the state agency. And just before I became Main Street State Coordinator, the entire program moved over to the Department of Arkansas Heritage in the Arkansas Historic Preservation.
I'm very proud of that Preserve Arkansas has started and been involved with in the recent past have been our Women in Preservation program, where we have highlighted women from throughout the state of Arkansas who are working to save historic places in all different kinds of ways. And also our Behind the Big House program, which helps to interpret the lives of enslaved people and the places where they lived throughout the state of Arkansas. Another important part of our work is our advocacy on behalf of endangered historic places. Preserve Arkansas has put out a Most Endangered Places list since 1999, and once places are included on the list, they become an advocacy priority for our organization. And we have worked diligently to help those properties around the state with local support and local advocates. That's very, very important to state that and to recognize those people.
One of my favorite events that I didn't help plan, but I got to be a part of was the ramble down to Camden a few years ago. And I had never really been to Camden before, but got to explore, that town down there, and there was just so much history and so many great structures down there. I had actually got to work on a building in Camden a number of years before. We restored the old post office down there, but I never got to visit it afterwards. So part of the ramble we took, we actually got to go eat there as a restaurant now. And then got to see some friends that I had forgotten I had in Camden down there, and got to reconnect with a bunch of people. So that every time I think of that trip, it makes me smile.
I was president for 3 years, and we did all sorts of fun things. We had the rambles, which I think Preserve Arkansas still has, although ours were probably more fun than the ones that you've had. I was in charge of the cooler, and I was in charge of the refreshments. I would make mimosas and Bloody Marys for everyone that wanted one on that bus as we were traveling around to the various cities and the various historic buildings and places that we were touring. And I have fond memories of some people that don't typically have a drink in the morning having a very good time on the bus.
So there was the after party, and oh, what a swinging group of preservationists we were. At that time, and I don't remember whose brilliant idea this was, it may have been, I don't want to pin it on anybody, let me stay out of that particular branch of trouble. But suffice it to say, an after party was planned for the Buckstaff Baths, I believe it was, which still functioned in that time as a public bathhouse. So we all left the Arlington Hotel, went trucking down Central Avenue to Buckstaff Baths, where the staff provided us with our proper bathhouse wear, which were, they looked like circa 1920s swimsuits and big towels and big sheets. And this became known as the toga party. I have asked whether, I know that there was photographic evidence, and remember this was, this was the day when everything wasn't recorded 43 times per second on a cell phone. So I don't have any photographs. I don't know that any of them emerged, but suffice it to say that our most esteemed, mature, and sophisticated preservation advocates, from Cyrus Sutherland to Parker Westbrook, to our dear friend John Mefford with the National Trust, dove in quite literally to the spirit of the place and the spirit of the evening.
There are a lot of places all across the state that I feel a really strong connection to because of work through Preserve Arkansas. Places like St. Joseph's Home and Center in North Little Rock, and the John Lee Webb House in Hot Springs, Goodwin Field in El Dorado. Our county courthouses are just so iconic, and in many cases they're the most historically and architecturally significant buildings, especially in smaller communities. And Preserve Arkansas helps to advocate for additional funding for those buildings.
We talk a lot today about self-care, and I think that being a part of HPA, the Historic Preservation Alliance, allows me to have self-care, because I know that everybody that belongs to that organization cares about me. They care about the things that I care about, and when I become and get in myself, I know I can make that call and they say, okay, that's good, but now let's just look at it like this and help me to straighten it out. So it's more than just an organization that knows what they're doing. They've researched the work, they know what happens on a state and local, state, and national level, but they can bring that all into one, and that's what I felt. I felt kind of covered by HPAA, that whatever would happen, they were going to be there for me. They would come to meetings, make speeches, whatever was necessary to encourage our effort in the Pleasant Street Historic District.